Hi families, welcome to week 7 packet. This week our story is called How About Them Apples? And if you'll notice in the top, the word bout is kind of slang for about. So really they're asking, how about them apples? There is a lot of dialogue in this week's story. Every time you see these quotation marks here, that's someone talking. The thing I noticed about the story is you have to remember that every time new dialogue starts, they skip a line or indent. It's either way. Sometimes you see indenting in books, and sometimes you see them just skipping lines. And this story chose to skip lines or stop typing and then move down to the next line. So you can kind of tell when Janie is speaking or when her mother is speaking. In the front part it says, "What do you mean we're going apple picking?" asked Janie. That's the first sentence right here. So since it said ask Janie, we know that Janie's doing the talking there. And I also noticed there was a contraction here. We are going apple picking. That stands for we are. Well then, there's no more words down here at this part. And it's they skipped a line and they started a new part. So this is a new speaker. It says, "Well, just that," said her mother. "We're going out into the country to an orchard." An orchard is a place where they grow lots of fruit trees. It could be an apple orchard, it could be a cherry orchard, things like that. When you turn the page, you'll notice that they continued the same pattern where they were done with a paragraph or a speaker, they would skip a line instead of indenting. At the very top it says the air at the apple orchard was crisp and cool. So that kind of gives me a clue that it's probably maybe the fall. It says the sky was bright. The leaves on the trees were orange and yellow and rust. It was a lovely day, but Janie wished she was back at home. So there are a lot of clues there at the top that tell you setting, time and place. You will continue reading and then you come to the page with the questions. Remember to read each question and pick the best answer. It's always okay to go back and highlight your answer and find the answer to double check. Also, if it asks for you to provide evidence from the text, you have to go back and actually find the evidence and then add it in there. For the next part, there are some, like starting at number 8, you have to add your own writing. So it says, "What did Janie remember after she opens the refrigerator and sees that there are no apples, pies, turnovers, or tarts inside?" So when you start this, you want to make sure you're using full sentences, and you would say something like, "Janie remembers," and then you would finish that and end it with some kind of punctuation at the end. Down below, it asks you for number 9 to support your answer with evidence from the text. Remember, that's where you want to go back and find the part that supports whatever you say. Always use full sentences. The math is very similar this week to what it was last week. Remember, you want to solve both sides of the equation before you do the comparison. So this one is 13 times 0. Any number times 0 is always going to be 0. Remember that rule. And then 2 times 1. Any number times a 1 is always itself, so that's 2 because it's 2 groups of 1. So for this equation here, for these, then 2 would be greater than 0. Go through and complete those, all of the rest of those. For the next part, it says to use the division and multiplication connection to help solve division problems. So one thing I just always want to remind you when we're doing division is you're starting with a total number. So for the example here, 36 is going to be your total number of items. And what they're asking you to do is to divide it either out into 4 equal groups or give 4 per person until you figure out how many people get the total number. It says you can also change the problem if you need to into a multiplication problem with a missing factor or product. So for this one, we're missing a factor right here. 4, you would say 4 times what number gives me 36? For number 2, it says you can choose a familiar multiplication strategy to find the unknown factor. So you could skip count, that's repeated addition, right? Or you could draw an array, or you could do equal groups. The answer to your multiplication problem is also the answer to your division problem. So it ends up being, oh, okay, well, 4 times 9 equals 36. Or I could have skip counted by this 4 until I went 4, 8, 12, all the way up to 9. And that's also the answer there. For the next ones, the next few sheets, they are story problems. So it says solve the problems below. Remember, it's really important that you pay attention to all the information that is given to you in story problems and then solve for the question they're asking. So it says a group of friends had money to spend at the store on summer toys. Visualize that. These friends, they're shopping for toys. They bought bags of water balloons and bubbles. Each bag of water balloons cost $2, and each bottle of bubbles cost $1. So here's some really important information that you want to keep in your brain. Sometimes I'll underline it, sometimes I'll highlight that just so I can come back to that. They purchased 3 bags of water balloons, also important, right? So I could even draw that out. Here's a bag of water balloons. Maybe here's a bag of water balloons. And then here's the bag. And, oh, I covered it up. 5 bottles of bubbles, I think. Maybe it's 5 bottles. Let me go back and look real quick. Yeah, 5 bottles of bubbles. So here's those water balloons. And then we need to have 5 bottles of bubbles. Here's a bottle of bubbles. 2, 3, 4. Here's 5 bottles of bubbles. I'm going to double check by reading and going back and rereading. So it says a group of friends had money to spend at the store on summer toys. They bought bags of water balloons and bubbles. Each bag of water balloons were $2 each. So I can actually say, all right, well, that's $2. That's $2, and that is $2. Each bottle of bubbles cost $1. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. $5 for the total. They purchased 3 bags of water balloons and 5 bottles of bubbles. How much money did they spend? Well, I have 3 water balloons times $2 each. That's $6 right there, right? And then I have $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 here in bubbles. So $6 plus the $5 equals $11. Your answer for that would be $11. For the next page, it looks like you might be looking at some information that you need and some information that you don't need. So you'll have to make a decision. Let's take a look at number 1. It says Mr. Yamamoto is making a breakfast for the 6 members of his family. So I'm imagining all 6 of the family members around, right, while he's cooking. He's making bacon and omelets. If each omelet needs 3 eggs, how many eggs does he need? So we don't really need to know about the bacon part because they're only asking about the eggs in the omelets. Well, this can be a tough one because you have to decide if he's making for himself, if he's the 7th member. But if I'm assuming that he's only making breakfast for the 6 members of his family, right, just and he's not eating for himself, then it would be 6 members times 3 omelets, right? 3 eggs per omelet. And that would be 12 eggs total. However, if we add Mr. Yamamoto, because it doesn't say he's making breakfast for the 6 members of his family and himself, but if we assume he's making that for himself, it would be 6 members plus him, which would be 7 total members, times 3 eggs per omelet, which would be 21 eggs. So this is kind of tricky. It depends on, I'm thinking it's this because they didn't specify, but if he's cooking the eggs for himself too, it would be him plus the 6 members. I would kind of add both in there, just to be sure. The social studies this week is a lot like it was last week, where you had to go through the answer part first. It was backwards. And then you would get to the part where you would do the actual writing. And this is the page where you do the actual writing. It's really important that you kind of know the key events page too. But this is the one where you would write the things on. I also looked ahead to the science. So for science this week, I wanted to talk a little bit about this page. This is a story about this kid who did an experiment where he took seeds, watercress seeds, I think they were, and he placed them in different places. He put cotton wool in the dishes, and then he sprinkled these watercress seeds over cotton. He placed dish A and B on a window ledge and C in a shoebox, which means it would get no light, right? He watered dishes A and C every day, so the one in the shoebox and one on the ledge, but he did not water dish B. This is how the dishes looked after 2 weeks, and what your job is to label the dishes. And I've been growing plants at home, so I wanted to show you a picture of my plants. I have watered all of them and left them in the windowsill so they get light, but I wanted to show you something kind of funny. I planted this tray of different plants. There's tomatoes and lettuce in there, and some other things. I actually lost my tags, so I'm pretty sure this section is lettuce. This is a certain brand of tomato, and then off to the side, which you can't see farther over this way, there is another brand of tomato. There's a different brand of tomato. And what you should notice here is you can see the leaves of the plants turning towards the sun. The leaves turn towards the light. These lettuce things in the middle, these things right here, these things actually started growing up first before everything else, and they were going so much towards the light that I flipped the tray, so they got confused on which way to grow. They started turning towards the other way. This is a top view of them, and they were of them growing towards the light. And this is another section. This is the other tomato brand that I'm growing, and they are really getting tall and spindly and heading towards the light. So the next step that I'm going to do with these is replant them in different pots. And let me see if I can highlight this so you can see it. Right here, this part, this long, long, long stem, I read that you are supposed to take that plant, even though the roots are down below, you're supposed to take that and bend the stem and only peek this little top part out when you replant them. So in the pot, it would be like this. And then there's a root ball here. I would drop the root ball in, and then I would keep the bended stem underneath, and then just peek the little leaves out over here. So that's supposed to make it grow thicker and stronger, and according to the internet, it says it's supposed to make it more hardy. Hardy's a word like, so it will grow better. And really, that's all I have for you this week, boys and girls. I miss you guys a ton. And remember, if you need to get a hold of me, you can always email me, or you can get a hold of me on the Remind app. Don't forget to go pick up your desk items this week if you haven't done so. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.